Brazil is a country with a lot to offer. Its staggering beauty, with its beaches and tourist destinations, its strong family culture, and its artful blend of the old, the new, and the innovative. But along with that comes a heartbreaking disparity between the very wealthy and the very poor. It all adds up to a crippled economy.
Rio de Janeiro is an example of Brazil, a place where heaven and hell coexist. You see heaven, the same elite, the same oligarchs, and you see the same people paying the price. And of course, this is a result of a deep, corrupt system.
But there's change afoot. For the past few years, Brazil's social, governmental, and corporate structures have been going through a major recalibration. Officials in all levels of government and industry, from the top down, are being jailed for misdeeds that involve massive money laundering and corruption, to the tune of almost $10 billion US.
It's really unbelievable. Powerful people being arrested.
It's huge. It's groundbreaking. It makes the Nixon scheme, Watergate, seems like a couple of kids playing in the sandbox.
Welcome to Força Tarefa de Lava Jato, also known as the Car Wash Task Force. This group of legal warriors in the progressive city of Curitiba are uncovering the biggest corruption scheme in the history of Brazil, maybe even the world. It started innocently enough. Black market money dealers were using small businesses, such as gas stations with car washes, to do money laundering for some of their clients. In one of those cases, federal investigators connected a small-time dealer to a big-time executive named Paulo Roberto Costa. He worked for Petrobras, a state-run oil firm, one of the world's most profitable companies.
Costa was a director of Petrobras, and we had lots of evidence against him. So he decided to make an agreement, and he told us about the companies that paid bribes and the politicians that received bribes.
When Paulo Roberto Costa decided to cooperate, there was a kind of domino effect. A lot of other people decided to cooperate as well. We were able to arrest a lot of politicians, a lot of top executives of the major construction companies in Brazil, and we are talking about people with the highest possible political and economic power.
As the list of perpetrators expanded, Lava Jato went into full throttle. They discovered that Costa and others with Petrobras had been overpaying contractors on various projects, including the massive Compares refinery outside of Rio de Janeiro. In return, those contractors paid kickbacks that helped keep the politicians in power who had first appointed them. Now came a major test of the rule of law in Brazil. What would become of all those executives and politicians who were caught red-handed? Brazil's legal system was historically hard on street crime and soft on criminals in business suits. It was time for the court of Judge Sergio Moro to step up to the plate.
The corruption was so widespread, was so systemic, that you have to send a strong message. Oh, you stop that. We will not tolerate this kind of behavior.
Moro immediately threw 20 top executives from 8 major companies in jail without bail for several months. For the ruling class, this was unheard of. And this was just the beginning. The scandal and the Lava Jato team have grown exponentially.
We are about 50 persons working together, lots of hours a day, working weekends, nights. Yeah, we work like detectives, because here in Brazil, the federal prosecutors, we can investigate also, not only the police.
Car wash case has put under investigation almost 1/3 of the senators and 1/3 of the secretaries of state. Almost a half of the governors are also under investigation. And we were able to charge more than 280 people with crimes such as corruption, money laundering, and criminal organization. More than 100 of these people were convicted to serve more than 1,500 years of jail.
Our unit makes so many arrests here that we need more space for, even for the criminals here.
Those convicted include the CEO of the contracting firm Odebrecht, who was sentenced to 19 years in prison after being convicted of paying more than $30 million in bribes to Petrobras executives. A senator who was charged with taking kickbacks. No sitting senator had been arrested in 30 years. And one of Brazil's most beloved politicians. Ex-President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was recently sentenced to 9.5 years in jail for taking bribes.
The rule of law is becoming stronger in Brazil, and this whole case, Lava Jato case, is a sign of this changing. Maybe this means that our justice will be more fair.
If we reduce corruption, we will increase our per capita income.
And because of the cooperation agreement with the defendants, they are committed to giving back more than $3 billion.
Part of that laundered money may find its way back to where it's badly needed.
This favela, it shows the reality of the vast majority of the Brazilian people. Over 50% of the population, of the households in this country, doesn't have basic sanitation. Talking about clean water supply, sewage systems. In 2017.
These persons, they don't have the basic, the health system, the education system. So you can say that corruption really kills people here in Brazil.
The public can see for themselves the enormity of the scandal at a gallery in Curitiba. All of this expensive art on exhibit was used to launder money and bribe officials, along with jewelry, fine wines, and other luxury items.
Lava Jato, it's okay for no corruption.
Lava Jato has become a work of art itself, with broad support of the public. Lava Jato bumper stickers are everywhere. Judge Moro has become a folk hero, and Delton has a best-selling book on the operation.
I wrote this book to say that we are not heroes in this case, and car wash case is only the first step.
Lava Jato is an attitude in Brazil now. It's a ray of hope, and it's an example for young prosecutors, young judges, that they can make a difference. We hope that we have success in the legal procedures, but the success of changing the mindset is already happening.
We live in a window of opportunity for changes. And we are committed to use any chance, any possibility to make things better in Brazil. And doing so is a matter that is up to everybody.
With the promise of the Arab Spring, new hope surged through Egypt in 2011, sparked by liberal, anti-capitalist, nationalist, and feminist ideals. That hope was short-lived. What seemed like positive change turned into a constantly shifting, unstable political situation, leaving ordinary citizens caught in a tug-of-war between the military, the judiciary, and dozens of political parties vying for power. The legacy of those politics hasn't been good news for women. It's made the work of Azza Salaman that much harder.
I'm fighting against the conservative mentality in Egypt. I work with women, especially in family law, and I am women human rights defenders. Disease is not easy in Egypt.
Over 20 years ago, Aza founded the Center for Egyptian Women's Legal Assistance. Her work is based in Cairo's worst slum, where she deals with culturally sensitive issues such as marital rape and the right for women to divorce.
The center focuses on access to justice, combating violence against women, advocacy, and providing services for marginalized women. Aza's dream is to aid and help marginalized women have a voice and have someone to advocate for their own rights. She always talked to us as team about how it is important to be in a slum area, for instance, and why is it we have this perspective of working with the communities. She believes that change will come from beneath, from within the community itself. It's not something that we should impose.
But Aza's dreams have been under siege. Egyptian society has continued to lean farther and farther to the right. In 2011, authorities raided 17 non-governmental organizations working on democracy and human rights issues. As a result, there was a huge backlash against activists. Then, matters got even worse for Aza.
In 2015, I had lunch with some friends in downtown. And in this time, I heard this peaceful demonstration, and I went outside and I saw the policeman killed a woman, her name activist Shayma al-Sabbagh. And after this, I went to public prosecutor to put my testimony about this, but they accused me as a part in this demonstration. But I am not a member in this political party. I am not part in this peaceful demonstration.
Aza became a defendant, accused of protesting illegally. Although she was eventually acquitted, she became a target. This was the first step in the authorities' efforts to destroy her. Instead of retreating, Aza was emboldened. She fought harder for enforcing and enhancing the rule of law by establishing what's known as the Protecting Witnesses and Whistleblowers Coalition. This was supported wholeheartedly by international human rights organizations.
The international support or region support, it is very important to me because this is put impression against the Egyptian government, and also to help me, I am not alone.
Then in 2016 came the biggest challenge of all. Egypt's President El-Sisi put a plan into force that imposed strict regulations on NGOs, accelerating a brutal crackdown on human rights.
The current government is actually trying to attack and stop the work of the civil society organizations, our organization included. That happens because they believe that we receive funds in order to harm the national interest, for example, or to add the Western values or advocate for Western values in our Egyptian society. Which is not true, by the way. What we're talking about is human rights and women's rights.
So 2 years now, we didn't receive any fund. The government didn't give us approval for any proposal or any project. It is difficult.
If we don't receive funds, that means we cannot do the work or provide the services we provide, because people either need salaries, and even if we work on a voluntary basis, then we wouldn't have the money to go and pay for the court fees, for instance. So they dry up our resources.
In many cases, NGOs were given criminal status, and Aza was no exception. Late in 2016, she was arrested at her home in Cairo, accused of tax evasion, establishing an illegal entity, and much more.
Last year when the police arrested me and they came in my home, I didn't understand. I feeling unfair. I feeling I didn't deserve this. But after this is the media put a lot of my picture in media, in TV, and this meaning invite people to attack me in the street, and this is scare me. And especially when they put some details about Aza Sulaiman take money from America, Qatar, and she has 52 million Egyptian.
So they are attacking Aza because she's very out loud about women's rights, about the rights of women in the private sphere. This is something that is dangerous for the government to talk about, because that means, or she's raising awareness in the families about women's rights.
But in reality, they frozen my account, personal and my company, and I can't work outside, and I can work, my resource in Egypt very limited. So, and I haven't this money. So they put a lot of liars around me. Yeah, and also this is hurt my personal and my family and my sons.
Aza remains strong, but the future of her organization and of human rights in Egypt remains uncertain.
Because if I lost my hope, I can die. I'm still fighting.
To an outsider, Azerbaijan puts on a glamorous and ostentatious face. But despite all the lavish attractions here, there is a dark side, a corrupt side, that keeps its citizens quietly oppressed and disenfranchised. This is a country that is petroleum rich and petroleum poor. Away from the opulence, the land is pockmarked by oil wells extracting wealth, which are surrounded by poverty and poor living conditions. Being a journalist here demands an extra amount of courage.
My name is Khadija Ismailova, and I'm an investigative journalist. One faces corruption at every stage of their lives in Azerbaijan. It starts from the day you were born, and then at the very end, when you die, your relatives again have to pay bribe to get a piece of land where you will be buried. Corruption is not just a negative notion. Corruption is a crime that kills people directly and indirectly. There is no fair play system in this country. So what I do, I investigate hidden business interests of high-level politicians in my country.
Once part of the Soviet Union, Azerbaijan has had the largest decline in democratic governance of any part of Eurasia. The country's presidency has roots in the KGB and has become a dynasty. Since 1993, Heydar Aliyev and now his son Ilham Aliyev have remained in power.
It's like a kingdom. It's controlled by one family. They're controlling the biggest part of the economy in this country. They are controlling most of the opportunities in this country.
Khadija is one of Azerbaijan's most courageous journalists and continues to challenge the current system, despite the consequences.
I spent a year and a half in prison, and even now I'm under surveillance and I'm being watched constantly.
Khadija's problems are far from unique. Over the years, large numbers of journalists and activists have been rounded up and jailed for their criticism of the Aliyev government.
Like Ilgar Mammadov, he is in prison now. These are my criminal cases. The first rule of investigative journalism is follow the money. And Aliyevs couldn't keep the money inside the country. They spend a lot of money outside the country. They buy mansions around the world. They buy businesses around the world. For example, President's daughter Leyla Aliyeva owns a lot of mansions in London. His son and daughters own property worth altogether $75 million in Dubai. Whatever business I've been investigating, the family members' names were popping out. I discovered documents in Panama State Registry showing that our President Ilham Aliyev's family members own companies in offshores. which they used to hide their business interests in Azerbaijan. One of the investigations was about 6 gold and copper mines. The president's daughter's company got the right to dig the gold out of those mines, including one particular in Chovdar. And according to the official estimates, the reserves were worth $2.5 billion. I actually didn't only discover that the president's daughters owned the company, but I also discovered that president himself ordered the Minister of Natural Resources to sign a contract with daughter's company.
Eventually, as a result of her reports, the public was starting to discover the truth about their dubious first family. That put Khadija on the government radar.
A couple days after first story on Panama companies have been published, a video camera had been planted in my bedroom. They filmed me secretly in my bedroom with my boyfriend and then blackmailed me with that video. And when I didn't step back, they posted the videos online. And that was basically the worst thing they could do to anyone, any woman in this country.
This was followed by a barrage of threats, a smear campaign in state media, as well as various criminal charges. The government wanted her out of the picture. Convicted of trumped-up charges, she was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. But this backfired. The government had no idea what they were in for.
I said, I want to be incarcerated. I like it there. And then my colleagues worldwide started a project which was called Khadija Project. Around 100 journalists joined the initiative and they started doing investigation on Aliyev's family. They continued the investigations that I've started. They conducted new investigations. They revealed new facts. And they announced that they are doing it for my freedom.
Soon after, some heavy hitters jumped on the campaign.
This is the observation paper done by my lawyers.
As her counsel, I've filed a case before the European Court of Human Rights that seeks to have the court recognize the violations that have occurred. She also benefited from support on a bipartisan basis from representatives from Congress and the Senate.
During the same period, the Obama administration had some serious discussions with President Aliyev.
First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to President Obama.
And there was the irony that Mehraban, the First Lady of Azerbaijan, was a UNESCO ambassador, while at the same time keeping a journalist in prison who had been investigating her and her daughters.
They understood that they are losing much more by keeping me in prison.
Soon, Aliyev began pardoning dozens of political prisoners. And around the same time, Khadija was eventually released and acquitted of 3 of the 5 charges. Still, she is watched carefully and cannot leave her country. And others still languish in prison while the Aliyev's family corruption and lineage continues.
I don't know if ending corruption is possible, but I will continue doing my job, exposing corruption, till the end of my life. Or, in better case, till the end of the problem.